is Landed in Leadership and Enlightenment, a podcast where the guests are exceptional humans that have faced their fears to crest into their best selves, growing into a way they can help their communities, creating opportunities, and sharing their secrets and their tips that they learned along the way. Without further ado, here we are, my friends. Have a great time today and enjoy Leadership and Enlightenment. And I can't thank you enough for joining me today. I know you're super busy. Your schedule's got you moving all over the place, but just for you to take the time to share with me today a little more about, your life and how you've gotten into this. Everything about your story to me is just absolutely interesting, and I'm so curious about it. And I'd love to just launch you into the guest size right now and kind of just let you tell your story. Where did you get started and how we ended up here?
I think that I came into this world with some pretty big spiritual lessons to navigate as a spiritual being and then a person who works with energy. That's how I read things primarily. And those lessons were of my mother who got kicked out of her tribe when she was pregnant with me because she was 20 years old and I was conceived from a one night stand in my very white Catholic family in the Midwest. The United States in the 70s was like, they didn't know what to do with my mom. So they kicked her out of town and said, don't come back until you have a husband. And so what happens is we receive information from our mothers in utero about their nervous systems, their safety, their beliefs, their stress, right? And so I came into this world navigating that, like belonging, feeling alone, feeling, the betrayal, feeling scared. And my mom, who didn't know better, she chose a man who was not healthy and was not good for her. He was angry and blamed the world. And so I was raised with that type of, toxic patriarchy um, until I was 11, and then they got divorced. But for me, I think as a spiritual person, what I had to learn was how to trust myself, how to accept myself for who I was. I was very much taught to fit in where I didn't belong, right? I was the only brown person in this huge white Catholic family.
Mm.
Catholicism, the way I was raised in it was very martyr, very like victim shamey. And so I had to like outgrow that programming. And it was very confusing for me, Dean, because I was like, as I grew up, I like had all this charisma and this energy and I was popular and I was pretty, but it was very confusing as well because I had this other programming. And I love my grandparents, but they just didn't know better. And so while I have so many beautiful memories growing up, it was very confusing as well because none of us really knew what was going on. Then as I got older, like I wasn't the person that anybody like worried about or, I was kind of acting out and like trying to get attention in these ways that we do because we're trying to like receive love and nobody really knew what to do with me. But I was also the one that people came to for advice and for space holding. And so that's really how, looking back, I was meant to come into the work that I have healed in myself and used to tend to my wounding and my programming so that I could hold space and guide others from this place of, I'm 51 now. So it's not like I'm 30 trying to teach people about
Right.
betrayal wounds and abandonment and this, that, and the
Yeah.
other. Like I've been through it and I've worked with it and I can be with myself in that shadow. Therefore, hold space and witness
Yeah.
yours.
I'll tell you, I can parallel a lot of the journey that you just described. My mom was twice divorced, and I found the conditioning of the dogmatic religion that I was also raised in Catholicism to kind of set me on a course that didn't really align with my truth. And I always felt like there was something that just wasn't balanced, and I couldn't figure out what it was. I was forced to do these things as a child that kind of represented my strength or my honor in my family and life, and yet they just never fit. It just for some reason it didn't click in, this fear idea of living in fear or not embracing that truth within yourself. And I speak a lot on that topic because when I also was young, I felt a lot of things going through me. I remember this one time, I remember I saw this vision of my neighbor across the street being hit by a car. And I just instinctively ran across the street and stopped her from moving. And that car came behind us. And I was 8 years old and I didn't understand what that meant, but I knew something out there just wasn't really aligning with what I was being told. And like you, I was searching for what that was, and how did that lead you to the next step in your life and what you actually found as your stability or flow that you've been working in?
Yeah, I spent so many years just like lost and confused, like so many of us have. And for me, the first love in my life and the first thing that I trusted 100% and never doubted was acupuncture school. And so
Mm.
that was when I think I started school when I was 27. And that really just put me on the path to a healthier lifestyle, to understanding myself from an energy perspective, from organ systems, from seasons, from the way we think and the way that we feel. So that was really the first thing. I was introduced to Reiki pretty immediately upon starting my practice. And so that really amplified my sessions with patients and helped me understand too universal life flow and how we're all connected to that and the power that that can be without you really having to try by just connecting them.
Mhm.
And I was really successfully and happily practicing acupuncture and energy healing for 17 years or so and had moved many places and was able to start up a practice and have plenty of people to treat, which is not normal. And I was able to support my family, working a lot less than full time people work. But I think when you become really good at something and you can do it with a blindfold on, that's your zone of excellence, but it's not necessarily like your zone of genius.
I like that.
And that is a book I just listened to, and it's really true because your zone of excellence is something you could do all the time and it's very familiar, but is it inviting you to grow and step up and up level? And for me, I was feeling stuck. I wanted to express more. Growth and inspiration are probably two of my most important ways that I want to feel and experience life. If I'm not inspired, or growing, like for me, I can get kind of flat and
Mhm.
lackluster and be an existential
Mhm.
crisis. And so I'm a seeker. And that's why I practice so many modalities, is because I have interest and because God literally guides me to the places where people need support. And so for me, the subconscious work that I do and internal family systems, what I'm finding is it's truly the healing that the world is asking for. So to answer your question, when pandemic hit, I just needed to pivot like so many people. And that's when I started training in these other things just from my own, I had been hearing about things on podcasts and had started
Yeah.
doing some of my own work and it just led me to the
You know,
place I am now.
I'm enamored by this conversation already because I feel like that pandemic time stone kind of reset all of us. I came out of a corporate career that I speak a lot about on this podcast and moved into my own personal growth. And to do that, I had to really go inside and find a strategy within myself that wasn't, like you said, the excellence, but the genius. And how was I going to explore that? And a lot of times it would create fearful scenarios for me that I had to address. And I became quite competent in also identifying pain signals that would reoccur as echoes, and I could release them using the techniques and the ways that I've learned to do that. I found tremendous health that grows around me. You mentioned you were 51. I wouldn't have guessed you were a day over 40. Obviously, the light shining through you. And it does tend to guide us. I think that's, the point of the conversation in this podcast, being behind leadership enlightenment, is that we become leaders in life outside of the idea of a title or a role, but in just this ability to help others heal. I use the term mirroring. I mirror a lot with people to allow them to see themselves within me and realize that light is something that they could go in and find themselves, and it's a place of growth and strength. You mentioned that you learned techniques over the pandemic that really helped you evolve into this next step of your career. Can you share some more of that with us? Because I think that's really what we come to talk about.
Yeah, I started hearing about the subconscious and started understanding that it is where our beliefs, our behaviors, and our habits are stored. And it's where we create 95% of our lives. That's what the neuroscience says. And I mean, that is just a trip when you think about it. That is why a lot of us feel stuck and wish we could grow, but we can't. And it's because our subconscious programming is really limited and self sabotaging. When we learn that programming from what we came into this world with, and then what was reinforced by our families, our peers, music, TV, and now, all this social media. And it's like we're all programmed, all of us. I don't like comparing us to technologies, but we all have these beliefs and this programming in our subconscious part of our minds. So, what are you creating from? You're creating from your subconscious programs. And if those are limited or contracting, and you only believe you can trust yourself this much, or experience this much success, or this much money, or safety, or stability, or healthy relationships, that's what you're going to keep creating over and over and over again until you do work like this, which can make it so much quicker, Dean, to just make those changes so that you can unattach from those stressful or limiting or self sabotaging behaviors and beliefs, go in a new direction in your mind and have a new experience. This work creates neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to have a new experience, and then also create new subconscious programs, which is why the work that I get to do is so special, because most things that work with the subconscious, they don't do that. Or if they do that, like maybe it's EFT tapping or self hypnosis, it takes a lot longer. But the
Mm.
process that I was trained in is very simple, conscious, quick. And what I want anyone listening to know is that you can make change and you can have the life that you want to have. You can have it actually pretty quickly with the right tools. It doesn't have to take 5, 10, 20 years of painful, repeating talk therapy over and over, or
Yeah.
whatever modalities people are using. Like with the right tools, it can actually be quite quick to just move on, move forward, create the life you want.
Yes, it's interesting that you mention it like that versus talk therapy. I'm with you on that. I had this belief when I was in my healing circle that a lot of it had to do with the community that I was talking through and growing with, and outside influence. I was left on my own for a couple of years during the pandemic when my wife and I replanted, and I didn't really have a spiritual community around me. And I had to take some steps to heal from my own perspective. And as you mentioned, I ran into a healer back in the day that would have a great conversation with me and then create a reprogramming tape that I would listen to before I'd go to bed at night. And I'm sure that what you do is much more in depth than that. But I got to experience at a very quick level that certain little things, like one of the things that said in the tape was like, "Oh, well, only drink clear liquids moving forward." I was trying to get away from some other things in my body. And I'd find myself years later only drinking clear liquids. I mean, as much as it seems like it's so simple, it's not a decision I made more than something now that's kind of wrapped itself around me as a way of life. What can you share with the audience without giving away, your practice that is kind of defining the differences between what you're saying versus going in and talking it out with somebody all the time and looking for this ideal of a magical moment versus a direction that you're taking it in and an outcome that you're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to share actually the practice. I love to share information and support anybody in a way that it's needed. But Site K is the process I was trained in. It's a silly name. I don't love it, but it stands for psychology and kinesiology. It was created by a psychologist. We do balances in that work. The two main balances I work with help people unattach in a very peaceful way from something that was stressful, triggering, or traumatic. And that could be the past, it could be right now, or it could be fear of the future. And the other main balance we work with is what we call a goal statement. And that's when I'd talk with you and be like, Dean, what do you want? And I'd be taking notes and I'd be holding space and reflectively listening. And then you'd come up with, likely with my support, your most favorite words that light you up. And then we create that new program in your mind so you can start having that experience. And those balances are very quick. The balances are meant to get your brain into what we call a whole brain state, which is in that way similar to EMDR. You're kind of crossing the midline of the body with your ankles and your wrists. In Psych K and EMDR, sometimes you're tracking back and forth with your eyes.
Mhm.
And we do muscle testing, which is the kinesiology part of Psych K before and after that balance to get you in the whole brain state to make sure there's been a shift. And it's so simple that sometimes you're like, what? But when you're all of a sudden doing the thing that you hadn't been able to do and sticking to it, or all of a sudden you're just not stressed out or wanting to throw up or avoiding the stressful memory or experience, that is very powerful. And sometimes it's very subtle psyche, but very, very powerful, where people will just look back and be like, oh, yeah, I just did the thing. I stood up in front of the people and I talked and I didn't want to leave my body or throw up or whatever it is. And I can't remember what you asked me, but that's the practice of Psych K. It's very simple, it's very gentle. You're conscious, unlike hypnotherapy. And we not only get to unattach from stress, but create new programs. And that's why this work I think is very special because other ways of working with subconscious don't offer both of those things. And if they do, it takes a lot longer. Like if you're doing
Right.
tapping, trying to bring in a
Yeah.
new belief and clear old ones. And internal family systems, which is the other framework that's newer in my practice, is this deeper inquiry also created by a psychologist. And both these psychologists were not able to serve their patients the way they wanted to. So they developed these frameworks over many, many years. And IFS is so beautiful because you get to be with and get to know the parts of you that need your attention. And often these parts of you are the ones that you don't like about yourself or you wish would
Mhm.
go away, or they're creating like very uncomfortable experiences in your life. But when you understand and learn that they just went into their roles to try to help you survive and they're protecting the vulnerable, exiled parts of you. It's so beautiful how things start to shift in your life and how these parts of you just basically want your attention and they want to know that they're not alone and that you see them and you ask them what they need.
And that's, to me, that's the pathway to true authenticity. I for many years hid from my dark side. I was blessed with this great book, The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. Years ago, I read it. I was coming out of my reading therapy with Dr. Wayne Dyer. And in those days, I really was, and I still do, working on the idea of what you see is inside of you and feel inside of you is what your life is actually going to transpire to. And it led me to these pieces of myself that I was avoiding. I was pretending like they weren't part of the equation. And when I started pulling those together and really bringing my holistic self together, you're right. It started showing me that these were the things that protected my family or protected me in a certain way that I didn't like the way they reflected out of somebody else because we're mirroring always, obviously. And when we see things in others, we see those in ourselves. And I didn't quite get that was, that truth. But once you unpack it and unravel it and really bring this framework to the way that your subconscious works in relationship to the idea that we're connected past this physical experience, and then we start to align all those things, like you said, beautiful, it really starts to come forward in your life where you can see, your whole self, your strength in a day. And it's not about succeeding or accomplishing. It's really just being in this environment and realizing it. Is there any supportive activity that you also suggest? Like I've been in a 7-year meditation practice in the morning, and I really believe that that time for myself, that 20 or 30, 40 minutes that I spend really gives me this place to stand in my day and realize that I'm part of something larger than what I'm actually doing in that day. But it's been my catalyst that's brought me into new experiences and open-minded mind up to new ideals and things of my life. And I've always said, you can't meditate a day away or find your strength within releasing in that fear. But if you look back in a year, you'll notice that your life has changed in magnanimous ways that you really can't explain by investing yourself like this. What do you take from all that?
What I take is that when we don't like parts of ourselves or we wish something would go away, it's a part of us that was dismissed either by ourselves or by someone else. We were taught that that part of us did not earn love and acceptance. And so we were taught to hate it or wish it would go away. Most models of mental health or well being, they don't work with the parts of us like that. They don't understand, even in like AA, that's not a thing. And just like you were saying, the medicine really is in the shadow. It's in the parts of us where we're wounded and wanting to heal. And when we get to be so vulnerable that we can stay in that discomfort and learn from it and understand what it wants us to know, just like you were saying, yeah, that leads to authenticity. It leads to embodiment. It leads to integration. And that's where I feel like a lot of modalities don't work with, even people that go out and work with plant medicines, which are very powerful. A lot of where people get messed up when they come back is there is no integration after that. And the
Agreed.
integration is often the most important part of healing. Um, and so that's why I love both of these frameworks and modalities because they take you real deep, really quickly in a compassionate and loving way. And then they also offer ways to be with those parts of you or to create action in your life that support either these new neural pathways you just created or the part of you that you're trying to get to know so that it
Yeah.
trusts you and can maybe go into a less extreme expression.
Well, I know you could help me with that. That's the spot where my personal work has been weak, I'll say, is that, yeah, I'm great at releasing, but not putting anything in place. And then later, I'm caught in a very uncomfortable situation when normally that pain signal would give me a direction. Now I have no direction. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? I don't feel that way anymore. I never put anything in place. And from what you're just saying,
100%.
obviously that's a step that I need to work on because you can release, but if you're not, you're kind of sitting in this middle ground where you're not really sure what to do with.
You're so right about that because clearing is important, but also, just like you were saying, the integration, the follow up, not just like purging, clearing, moving, but the integration is really, really important. And so, in the Psych K process with your subconscious, there would be an action step, what we call, which helps you be accountable. And it can be something small or something huge. It doesn't matter. But when your subconscious looks back on our notes from our session and sees that you did that, it's reinforcing this new pathway that you created so that your subconscious has an easier time now showing you that what you just created is true because you're just making it easier for your brain to go down this new path you just created. And then in IFS, a lot of the magic in that work is when you continually check in with that part that you just got to meet in session and like, oh, I'm feeling that chronic pain or that frustration or
Mhm.
that hypervigilance. Okay, I notice you. I just want you to know I'm here with you. You're not alone. Is it okay if I just sit with you for a bit? And it doesn't have to be this elaborate practice. It doesn't even have to be 10 minutes. It can be just noticing
Mhm.
because a lot of times we're not noticing, we're ignoring,
Mhm.
we try to keep going. Chronic pain is a really good example of that. A lot of times people's chronic pain heals immediately when we do IFS or Psych K because
Yeah.
both of those processes are very somatic. Clear
Mhm.
subconscious stress from the body, or a part will show up through your body. And then when you're like, what do you need? I'm here with you. You're not alone. All of a sudden, people's chronic pain goes away.
You know, it seems like you're almost teaching people how to learn their self language, I call it. When I was in the beginning of this, I didn't realize like a lot of the pain signals, a lot of the feelings, the flutterings, those were language tones in my personal language with the universe itself. It was warning me of things. It was saying like change your diet in a certain way or do certain things around, the public around you in a certain way. And I used to assume it to be a reflection of the body and maybe something I ate, but not realizing it was a language within me. And a lot of the people that I talk to around this subject, I say to them, like, when you first get into yourself, you're learning a language that's exclusive to you. And when
Yeah.
you start to learn how to translate that language, then, like you said, you're much more powerful to go into these places of your personal life and realize, like, oh, this is telling me something. I'm now looking for the answers behind this rather than avoiding the circumstance, saying to myself, like, pain is not good. Actually, pain is the doorway leading you into this next place. So we've gotten to this spot where obviously everybody in the audience now wants to contact you because you're going to be able to give them this place, these tools. And I've never yet interviewed or spoken with anybody that has so eloquently taken, what I speak about so roughly and put it into the context you have. I'm really impressed that this is, that the light has drawn you into this place. And I have to ask that question. Do you feel around you that you're being guided into these things more than you're deciding to do them once you started to kind of give your life into this ideal of being this person or this support to others?
Dean, it's such a beautiful question. And thank you. I feel really seen by you because these modalities really were brought into my life by God because I didn't know what they were. Yes, I knew what acupuncture school was, but even how I came into acupuncture school was the first thing. I just followed the little yes, yes, yes. And then it was this magical, supportive, amazing
Ooh, I'm
career
getting the
for me.
chills.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it's amazing even when I tell that story, and then Psych K and IFS, I didn't really understand what they were until I was in the trainings, and then I was like, "Oh, it's because this is what people need and what they want, and it's what I needed too."
Yeah.
Like, I don't abandon myself anymore. You heard my story coming in. I don't abandon myself. I go to bed. I sleep well. I honor my needs. My no is very easy, and I say that now without guilt. My yes is an absolute all the way yes. And when I find myself at all frustrated, that's when I know how to pull back and be like, that is not the direction for me. It's time to pause, integrate, observe until the path becomes clear. So, to your point, yeah, allow that to come through and guide me, I think, more than trying to rule the world with my conscious mind or my part that from my own safety needed to like make things happen
Hmm.
to survive and to not fail, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, anybody in a work setting, entrepreneurial or corporate mindset can take a lot from that because, that's that faith that starts to build within you. And you realize, like, I'm no longer shining a flashlight, I'm shining a spotlight.
Mm,
And when you shine the spotlight, those that have been chasing revenue or income realize that's literally the fuel for the spotlight. It's the other way around. And so the reason why life didn't feel like you wanted it to and you were chasing is because you were only holding a flashlight and you felt all these other things around the light was actually what you were looking towards. When you start to shine that light within you, like you were just speaking of, without regard and knowing that it's taking you in a place that you need to be in. And I look at it like the rings in a tree rather than climbing a ladder. You're always in this right place at this right time. And that acceptance of it, it starts to really generate that energy of your life moving forward as your personal leadership, your role. I love to say, even in meditation is not for you. It's the commitment you've made for the universe, and it depends on you. And when I don't meditate, I feel I've let, the collective down because that day, that energy that I was going to put into the collective was there for others, not for myself. And you really start to reinvest your mindset into that. And that momentum, I call it mental momentum, that really starts to carry you through into these ideals of life that you want to experiment with and have fun. And you don't see it as a challenge anymore, but you see it as this opportunity to be able to be a little more of what you felt inside when you were that kid. And I can say personally, not having the stereotypical framework of a family, raised the same way. In a lot of ways, I was the outcast in my family. I'm just not being raised back east and divorced mother, father, that kind of thing. But I always felt inside like something else was with me. Like I didn't need to worry. Something loved me out there more than where I was at. And I think that design for my place on this planet, and maybe you would agree in your own, is really what's been carrying me along the whole time. This truth that it's bigger than what we thought it was.
well, it seems like you have a very strong connection to God or what is bigger than you, which is really beautiful. And that faith has helped you come a long way in your life. But I also want to honor the part of you that maybe has a day where they don't feel like meditating and they just want to
I tell
rest
you.
or space
Yeah.
out or
Yeah.
integrate because like discipline is really important. Devotion is really, really important. But yeah, there is a part of you that
It could
only
also be
wants
a
to
signal
meditate for a
that
day.
yeah, it also could be a signal though that I'm hiding from other pains by those consistencies too. And I realize that it's all kind of wrapped within itself. Well, I'm going to be reaching out to you for a further conversation, my friend. You have wisdom beyond years within, the efforts that you put into yourself. Is there anything you'd like to leave the audience with? How to get a hold of you? I'm going to obviously have it in the show notes as well, but just any last words?
Yeah, for sure. I want anyone who's listening to know that no matter what your circumstances, where you've come from, what you're in right now, you are a limitless, amazing creator, and really so much is possible for you. And it doesn't have to be hard and arduous and enduring. You are worthy of the best that love and life has to offer right now, and you can access that quickly. It doesn't have to take you a long time.
Yes, I agree. Well, thank you, my friend. I hope that you be willing to come back on after the first of the year and maybe we can talk a little bit about the work that we work on together. And that would be awesome to hear.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much for having me, Dean. I
You're
hope you have
welcome,
a
my
beautiful
friend.
day. Okay.
God bless.
You too. Bye bye.
Well, there we go. Another amazing example of the universe working in its magnificent way today. Appreciate you showing up and look forward to seeing you again at Leadership and Enlightenment.